Not enough people looking to score other than Paige Beckers.
Beckers working on Kelsey.
She can take over the game in these instances, and that's what she needs to do for Dallas.
The small hand clutching a broken pencil trembled as 8-year-old Madison Carter tried to complete her maths homework on a piece of cardboard she had found behind the dumpster at Combs Middle School in Des Moines. Unaware that a young woman watching her through the chain-link fence, tears streaming down her face, was about to change not only her life but the lives of hundreds of other children who had long gone unseen. It was one of those crisp September mornings where the sunlight feels almost too clean, the kind that makes even shadows appear sharper. And yet beneath that fragile beauty lay the quiet tragedy of a child whose dreams were being smothered by poverty. Madison's story was not unique, but it was raw, human, and unfiltered, a reminder of how invisible hardship often hides in plain sight. Her mother, Maria, worked 2 jobs at a local laundromat, leaving home before dawn and returning after dark, her hands cracked from detergent and exhaustion. They lived in a 1-bedroom apartment where the hum of the refrigerator was often the only sound that broke the silence of empty cupboards. Madison didn't complain. She was proud, disciplined beyond her years, and determined not to let her circumstances dictate her worth. She came to that same patch of grass every morning for 3 weeks, kneeling on the cold ground with her cardboard and her broken pencil, tracing numbers and letters into the rough surface, erasing mistakes with her fingertip, and beginning again, as though she were writing her own future one stroke at a time. She didn't want her teacher to know she had no notebooks, no crayons, and no backpack that wasn't patched with safety pins. That morning, Caitlin Clark, fresh from an early workout and taking a different route home to avoid traffic, noticed the little figure by the playground. At first, she thought the child was drawing, but as she looked closer, something about the concentration, the small, hunched shoulders, the way the girl bit her lip when the pencil broke again, stopped Caitlin in her tracks. She pulled over, lowered her window, and watched. The sounds of distant traffic and birdsong seemed to fade until there was nothing but the sight of that child's determination. For 20 minutes, Caitlin sat silently, her heart tightening with each second. She had seen poverty before on television in charity campaigns, but this was different. This was personal. The image of a child working so hard with nothing but a stub of graphite and courage cut through her like truth. It reminded her of herself at 8 years old, sitting at her kitchen table, surrounded by fresh paper and sharpened pencils, dreaming of playing basketball for a living. She realized how much she had taken for granted. The difference between her and Madison was not talent or will, but access, the invisible privilege of having tools to dream freely. As the school bell rang, Madison stood, brushed off her dress, and walked toward the building with her chin high. Her shoes were scuffed, her pink dress faded, but she carried herself with grace, the quiet dignity of someone who refused to surrender. Caitlin's eyes followed her until she disappeared through the doors, and something shifted within her. That moment, that tiny, fragile glimpse of human perseverance, was enough to stir a force inside her stronger than pity. It was purpose. She drove straight to the nearest office supply store, but as she wandered through the aisles stacked with bright folders, shiny backpacks, and boxes of pencils, the sight overwhelmed her. It wasn't right that abundance sat so close to deprivation, that shelves overflowed while a child just blocks away had nothing. Buying supplies for one girl suddenly felt like pouring water on a forest fire. She knew what she had to do. She called her agent, her foundation coordinator, 3 local business owners she knew personally. Within 2 hours, she had spent over $500 on school supplies, but more importantly, she had begun building a plan. That afternoon, she convened an emergency meeting with her foundation team. Her voice trembled with conviction as she said, "There are kids in our own city doing homework on cardboard because they can't afford paper. That's not a headline, it's a failure of community. We need to fix it." The room fell silent, and then one by one, her colleagues nodded. They began making calls to schools, churches, and community centers, uncovering a staggering reality. Madison was not alone. Dozens of children in Des Moines were quietly improvising, borrowing pencils, writing on scraps of paper, or skipping assignments altogether. The statistics were hidden behind bureaucratic numbers, but Caitlin's discovery gave those numbers faces and names. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Caitlin returned to McCombs Middle School. Not as a bystander this time, but as a force of change. Carrying a duffel bag full of supplies, she walked through the front doors and asked to see the principal, Dr. Sarah Martinez, a woman whose eyes bore the fatigue of years spent advocating for children in an underfunded system. Dr. Martinez looked startled when she saw Caitlin Clark, the famous basketball player, standing in her office. "Ms. Clark," she said, blinking in disbelief. "What brings you here?" Caitlin told her everything. The girl, the cardboard, the broken pencil, the ache in her chest that hadn't eased since that morning. As she spoke, Dr. Martinez's expression softened, her eyes glistening. "I know that little girl," she said quietly, "and there are many more like her." She opened her desk drawer, revealing a list of students who needed help with supplies, meals, or uniforms. Pages of names that represented unseen stories. Caitlin felt both heartbreak and hope surge through her. This wasn't going to be a one-time gesture. Together, they devised a plan that would become Project Bright Start, a local initiative to ensure that every student in the district had access to basic learning materials. Within weeks, donations poured in, businesses sponsored classrooms, volunteers packed supply kits, and students who once hid their struggles walked to school with new backpacks and new confidence. But what touched Caitlin most was Madison's reaction when she returned to her spot behind the school weeks later. The little girl looked up, eyes wide, holding a brand new notebook with her name written neatly on the front. "Now I can write my dreams properly," Madison said softly, smiling through a missing tooth. Caitlin knelt beside her, tears slipping down her face, and said, "You already were. You just needed the right paper." In that moment, Caitlin understood something profound. Charity wasn't about giving from abundance. It was about recognizing the shared humanity that binds us, about seeing the invisible and deciding they deserve to be seen. Madison's broken pencil had written the first line of a much larger story. A story of awareness, compassion, and community reborn through the courage of a single act of noticing. And sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.
Their coach, and she started to look at wide open offenses, just like that.
Oh, JJ. That was telegraphed.
Madison Carter, Dr. Martinez said softly, her voice carrying both admiration and sorrow. "She's one of our brightest students. Her teacher says she never has the right supplies, but she always finds a way to complete her assignments. We try to help where we can, but there are too many children in the same position, and our resources are stretched thin." Caitlin nodded, her eyes steady. "I know," she said quietly. "That's why I'm here. I want to change that." What followed would not only transform Combs Middle School, but create a ripple effect that would reach schools across the entire state. As Dr. Martinez led Caitlin through the hallways, she pointed out details that most visitors would overlook. The shared textbooks, the worn-out shoes, the empty lunch trays. 68% of our students qualify for free or reduced lunch, she explained, as they passed a classroom where pupils were working in groups, sharing pencils and crayons, their innocence masking the depth of their struggle. Many come from single-parent homes where every penny goes towards rent or electricity. School supplies are a luxury. When they stopped outside Madison's classroom, Caitlin peered through the window and saw the same little girl from that morning, sitting upright at her desk, her eyes full of focus. She wasn't writing, just listening, absorbing every word as though each syllable was gold. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, joined them quietly. "She's remarkable," she whispered. "Her verbal scores are outstanding, but her written work suffers because she has nothing to practice with at home. It breaks my heart daily." Caitlin felt that familiar fire rise within her. The same fierce determination that had driven her to chase her basketball dreams now turned towards something greater. "That's going to change," she said firmly. Within weeks, her vision began to take shape. Working with her foundation, local businesses, and community leaders, Caitlin launched the Back-to-School Backpack initiative, not just a supply drive, but a movement built on dignity, equality, and hope. On the morning of the event, Combs Middle School was unrecognizable. Colorful banners fluttered from the windows, volunteers handed out breakfast, and families gathered in the courtyard surrounded by laughter and the scent of pancakes. At the center stood a brand new outdoor basketball court, freshly painted, gleaming in the autumn sunlight, a symbol of renewal and belonging. Caitlin took the stage for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, surrounded by media, parents, and hundreds of children. But her gaze searched for one face. When she finally saw Madison and her mother standing quietly at the back, their eyes wide with awe, Caitlin's throat tightened. Madison was wearing that same faded pink dress, but now she held a backpack brimming with supplies, and a smile so radiant it seemed to light the morning itself. Before cutting the ribbon, Caitlin lifted the microphone. 3 weeks ago, she began, I met a little girl who changed my life. The crowd fell silent as she told Madison's story, how she had seen her writing on cardboard with a broken pencil, and how that single moment had opened her eyes to the invisible struggles in their community. Madison Carter, she said, looking directly at her. You taught me that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear pink dresses and carry broken pencils. The crowd erupted in applause, but Caitlin wasn't finished. Madison, will you come help me cut this ribbon? Because all of this exists because you refuse to give up on your dreams. Madison walked forward, holding her mother's hand. The crowd parted as the little girl approached, her backpack bouncing with each step. When she reached Caitlin, the athlete knelt so their eyes met, and together they lifted the scissors. Madison whispered, Thank you for seeing me. Caitlin smiled through tears. Thank you for teaching me what courage looks like. The ribbon fell and the courtyard erupted in cheers, not just for a new court, but for the deeper truth it represented. That every child deserves the chance to thrive, that being seen can be life-changing. 6 months later, the initiative had expanded to 12 schools across Des Moines, reaching over 3,000 students. Madison was thriving, her grades soaring, her confidence blooming. Yet the most profound transformation was the friendship that had formed between her and Caitlin. They met often, not as celebrity and fan, but as mentor and student, as two souls who had found purpose through each other. One afternoon, as they sat on the new court watching other children play, Caitlin said, You know what I learned from you, Madison? The most important victories aren't the ones won in front of crowds. They're the quiet ones, the ones where someone keeps going even when